Hello there, and welcome to today's webcast, Leading in Crisis, Stories of Public Sector Innovation in Turbulent Times. I'm Dustin Heisler. I'm Chief Innovation Officer for Government Technology, and I'm excited to serve as host along with my colleague, Joe Morris, our Vice President of Research for the Center for Digital Government for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. We've got a lot of ground to cover over the next 30 minutes, but we're excited that you're along for the journey. Now, joining me to discuss Leading in Crisis today, I mentioned my co-host Joe, but we also have a special guest from the state of Oklahoma, Ayanna Wilkins, the Oracle Manager at the state of Oklahoma's Office of Management and Enterprise Services. I wanted to spend a few moments to introduce Ayanna. She manages vendor relationships for the state of Oklahoma, and in this position, she manages budgets, works on contracts to be presented to legal for execution, manages all purchase orders to encumbered funds for the goods and services contracted, and she's also responsible for tracking available encumbrances, invoices, payments. She co-maintains the 3 to 5 year roadmap for the state's enterprise resource planning application and manages the technical and security provisioning teams for the state's ERP. So we're really excited to dive in deep with Ayanna here in a minute. Now, this is an unprecedented time to be in the public sector, and there have been countless stories of how state and local agencies have stepped up to respond to this global pandemic. Today, Joe and I are going to start by providing a snapshot of some of the agencies that are leading in crisis, and then do a deep dive into the amazing example out of the state of Oklahoma through a fireside chat with Ayanna Wilkins. We'll wrap things up by explaining what's in store going forward and how we're partnering with Oracle to capture and tell stories from the trenches of this pandemic so we can all learn from one another. So let's dive into our first lesson from the field, the city of San Jose, California. San Jose made the list today just because of many different examples of things that they're doing that really have demonstrated leading in crisis. Starting first with communication. Using flash reports, they're designing updates and regular public service announcements to the public to keep things consumable, compact, and very easy for the public to engage with. They're also conducting webinars with residents to educate them on a variety of social safety net components such as housing and other things. And one other interesting thing is they've really focused on providing all of these experiences through multilingual experiences online. So regardless of your language, they've really tailored information to you.
Well, the state of New York made our list because they've launched a digital SWAT team. How cool is that? Imagine launching a digital SWAT team that's going to help the state's response in terms of mobile web applications, data analytics, and other areas on the civic technology front. Within 24 hours of launching it, they had 500 submissions and over 1,000 volunteers. It wasn't just the digital state SWAT team that got them on the list, but they've also partnered with New Jersey and Connecticut to launch a contact tracing initiative, and they've responded rapidly in looking for private sector expertise to respond to COVID-19.
So another fun example comes out of the city of Austin, Texas. The Capital Metropolitan Transportation Authority is a special district that has really been impacted by COVID-19. As we know, not everyone is using mass transit systems that exist. And so they've leveraged that infrastructure to partner with local farmers and food pantries to deliver food to people that need it most. And over 42,000 meals have been delivered in the first 2 weeks. And they're also leveraging a lot of online systems in order to make their services more accessible to people. They're distributing personal protective equipment masks to customers, providing free rides, especially to those in healthcare to fill some of the gaps, and then really focusing on kind of the employee training aspect. This is a new normal for all of us. And so, how to culturally connect people to technology that may have been driving buses before is more important than ever. So another fun example out of Austin, Texas.
Another part of the new normal is that we're all working from home, and the city of Los Angeles quickly moved to make their employees remote. In only 11 days, moved 12,000 employees remote. So of a workforce of 40,000 employees, that's quite significant. Right now, their remote and virtual workers hovers around 20,000, but 12,000 of those were moved pretty much immediately to work from home. Quite an impressive feat for their IT organization to be able to do that and create the Safer at Home program to help guide their workforce and their public through the challenges associated with COVID-19.
Great. Now we've got Malibu, California. Malibu has done some really interesting work kind of under the hood of government. They launched new cloud and policy automation services to better serve their population, which Malibu has a population, 50% of which is senior citizens. And these tools have enabled their city workers to really focus on how they prioritize their workflow and work requests. And, that's both internally and externally. This is unprecedented times, so these types of tools are more important than ever. So now employees that are sitting at home can have a mechanism to actually respond to these, to prioritize them. And, there's a whole logic tree that's built into that. So some great examples of kind of looking at the under the hood aspect of government and how to streamline a lot of these processes.
And another Texas example out of Tarrant County. This one caught our attention. In fact, we covered it in our COVID-19 newsletter. But Tarrant County launched a website that allows their residents to go through a self-screening process. And if they meet that strict criteria, the site will automatically schedule them an appointment at a Fort Worth testing site to be tested for COVID-19. The platform itself that manages it was provided at no cost by a coalition of industry partners, including Adobe, Oracle, Splunk, Accenture, Data House, New Harbor, Security, Globant, Yline, and others in coordination with Nonprofit Alliance for Innovation. So it represents the best, I think, of both what government and industry can produce in a time of need. And the Tarrant County Information Technology Department was instrumental in launching the site.
And just to kind of add on to that, I mean, these industry collaborations are more important than ever and really demonstrate what it means to lead in crisis. And so the National Governors Association actually picked up on this example. And so you can see on the screen ways that you can plug into this COVID-19 testing and data response platform. Well, but really, leveraging the expertise from our industry partners and from these nonprofit organizations is going to be a way that we can rapidly respond and demonstrate leadership in crisis. So moving on to the highlight and kind of the feature of this story is where we want to bring Ayanna Wilkins in with the state of Oklahoma. And, as we looked at what has happened and what has transpired over the last few months, this is a new normal for all of us. And we're looking at ways to respond to this new crisis and really figure out what's going to stick kind of post COVID-19. And Oklahoma has done a lot of amazing work to lay the foundation for it and to rapidly respond to this in a way that had really caught our attention. And so, Ayanna, thanks so much for joining us today and carving out 30 minutes of your time. To set the stage with our conversation, tell us a little bit about your role in the agency that you support in Oklahoma.
Yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for having me. I work for the Office of Management and Enterprise Services for the state of Oklahoma, and my primary role is to basically manage all things Oracle along with their partners. This role is fairly new here in this state for the last 2 years. OMES is an agency that oversee all things related to financials, HCM, as well as IT services. And that's the division that I work for.
Many state agencies have had their operations significantly impacted by COVID-19, but you had a foundation set in Oklahoma that enabled you to quickly adapt. Can you speak to this?
Yes, our foundation was attributed to, our renewed partnership with Oracle. In the past, it wasn't as seamless as it should have been. However, when I took on this role, that was my primary goal, is to focus on one central state and Oracle point of contact person. This person, along with myself, will be able to, streamline the communication with Oracle, the partners, the agencies, and rebuild our relationship.
So I know there's a number of states that, were really caught off guard by COVID-19, in addition to the fiscal constraints, just thinking about the implications of taking a workforce remote and having to rapidly spin up, a variety of tools to communicate information on this. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you had to overcome in Oklahoma in responding to this crisis?
Yes, as you all know, there's a lot of old technology still out there, legacy applications and so forth. Shelter in place came about and the workforce had to work from home. That was a big challenge because we had to ensure from an IT perspective that constituents of the state of Oklahoma are not going to be impacted on services that they are reaching out to the state for due to this pandemic. So we had to ensure that those legacy applications and those websites and so forth, we had to make sure that that was working for the constituents as well as the employee workforce within the state who are providing those services. So that was one of the primary challenges that we faced going into this pandemic.
Well, we're here to talk about leadership in crisis and leading in crisis. So I want to shift gears and talk a little bit about how you and your organization responded. Oklahoma launched a series of innovative technologies, from a low-code mobile app to a chatbot. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you did?
Yes. You know, when shelter-in-place came into play for us, we have about 35,000 state employees. And working from home, you know, we really had to figure out very quickly how we can provide IT services to them. One of the things is that our ticket volume increased with our service desk. From one day went to 147 ticket volume to the next day 2,800 service volume tickets that increased. So there was a big increase in that, as well as the wait time. So the wait time went from 20 minutes to 3 hours, something that we felt that the chatbot will help us with answering questions when it came to how do you get to O365? How do you get to the VPN? How do you do this? You know, so that was something that we implemented for the IT side of OMES to help not only the service desk, but as well as, you know, the state workforce that was trying to get to some of those services. And it was a very all hands on deck mindset. And I would say, you know, prior to the pandemic, OMES already had this get it done type of attitude, right? It's whatever it takes to get things done. So going into the pandemic, this wasn't something that was something new to us as far as all hands on deck on helping the service desk. So it was a very easy transition. We also had already started a type of a toolkit to provide to employees on how to do BDI and, you know, VPN and so forth. So using the chatbot along with those toolkits, we're able to provide something. And that was it was a quick turnaround. It was about 8 days turnaround on Oracle on their side, you know, expediting resources as well on the state side, and working together day in and day out. You know, I would say that all hands on deck wasn't just on the state side, it was also on Oracle side. So we were very successful in getting that turned around quickly and providing that to eliminate some of the call volume and the call waiting that we were experiencing. And, you know, when that was implemented, it definitely dropped our volume down, not back down from where it was previously, but at least down where it was manageable for the service desk. Application that we implemented was also for one of our largest state agencies. And it was a mobile app, and their need was they had to find a way to track all entries as well as purchases that are related to the COVID-19 response. You know, like many other large agencies throughout the United States, they also had a legacy system. So we had to, you know, rapidly provide them something that was going to allow them to monitor that as well as track it. So when it comes to the state response regarding the CARES Act, they had a way to report accurately. Both of those were implemented around the same time, and I so much thank you, the resources on the state side as well as Oracle, for coming together, and it just was a testament to our partnership and why we were so successful.
Wow. So, I mean, that's incredible to hear. 8-day turnaround, you know, at the state level is not something that you normally, you know, talk about. And so it's great to hear, you know, how that worked. I'd like to dig into the chatbot a little bit more so, and if you could just tell the audience, you know, how do employees access that chatbot, and what was their response to it? I mean, how did they respond to having, you know, a new kind of intelligent experience that they could use to get information rapidly?
Yes, so we really didn't take that chatbot and put it across we put it on our website, and it was mainly to our IT channel of that website. So when anyone went on our website and was looking for how to submit a ticket or how to do anything, that chatbot was there to help guide them, and they're able to get an answer very quickly. And what was the second question again?
What was the response that they had to it? So how did they this new way of accessing information? Because I know, this is very different than normally going through the typical channels and having to wait, all of that time. So how did they respond to that?
Yes, they responded well. I mean, I think one of the things that, with any change is going to take a while, right? So we put it out there, and there was an increase in the volume of those who were using it and so forth. But also, we didn't stop just at the implementation. What we also did is we turned this over to our technical account managers within the state who work one-on-one with our users, and basically they are now feeding, as you say, the bot. They're training it so that it can be more useful for any question related to IT services. So I think it was well received, and it is currently being used and used daily, and we haven't really had any issues so far. We hope that, in the future we'll be able to expand this across all services of OMES.
That's great. And I know these types of technologies are more important than ever, especially as agencies are dealing with fiscal constraints and need to really amplify and augment existing employees to deal with unprecedented demand on services. So great example. Kind of taking a few steps back, what have you learned along the way? I know, y'all have been all hands on deck, as you mentioned, working with Oracle and doing things. Any lessons learned that you can share with the audience?
Yes. One thing that I've kind of learned from this is that, change is hard. It's hard for everyone, regardless of who you are. When you're dealing with the workforce that we have, trying to implement change and move them to work from home and, really getting them to use the tools there to continue their business as usual. And one thing that out of this, we were forced to kind of do this and do it very quickly. But one thing that we've noticed is that productivity has increased. It really showed that employees are really more efficient, as well as it gave us some insight to there may be some things that we need to reevaluate when it comes to tasks that we were previously doing prior to the pandemic. Maybe they're not as necessary as they needed to be prior to that. So I think that is one thing that I've learned. And, with anything new, again, sometimes you just have to handhold people, just take them along step by step, how to use something. Even if we had it on the chatbot, we also did a live agent. So even if they weren't able to get the answers that they were looking for directly at that moment, we also had the ability to point them to a live agent. Sometimes they just need to hear a voice to comfort them and to get them to the task that they were trying to do. And the all hands on deck to get it done, that is something that regardless of your position, regardless of the skill set that you have, when you have that mind frame, you're opening up your workforce to give them the ability to take on a new skill set that's going to make them a better employee, not only for your organization, but for themselves. A lot of our skill sets, we don't have the ability to keep that updated. But now, with all hands on deck, it's just go in there, and out of that, you may just find another gem that can pick something up and do something that's definitely different from what they've been doing over the last several years.
Well, that's phenomenal. When we look at events like this, whether for me going back to the Great Recession and the Recovery Act to where we find ourselves today, we see a lot of federal funding flowing to states, to localities, and those funds come with strings attached, and they come with transparency requirements. Can you speak a little bit to what you are doing to track that? I know you've got some efforts within a mobile app specifically, but can you talk about kind of the state's efforts in that space?
As far as our state comptroller, I know she's been communicating with all of the agency chief financial officers to kind of streamline on how they will be responding to get the federal funds and so forth. So we in our ERP, we also have the ability for agencies to tag all of their transactions again and anything that is related to that. So we have one way of seeing, okay, what is all of the COVID response? And from that, it will give the executive management the ability to make sure that they are responding to whatever requirements are needed for the federal reimbursement under the CARES Act.
You mentioned a series of metrics earlier on in terms of what you're tracking. Can you speak a little bit to what you're doing in the analytics arena?
Yes. Right now, we are engaged with Oracle and one of their partners in looking at Oracle Analytics. And this is a new product for the state. And we're trying to really understand the different ways that we can, one, house our data in one location, a data lake per se, and then also taking that data and then being able to pull from it and provide visualizations as well as dashboards to not only from the executive management within each agency, but also all the way up to the cabinet secretaries and the governor himself. So we're starting really small in that perspective as far as dealing with what OMES is needing, but we're making sure that that product is going to be able to meet the needs for the state throughout, for all of the agencies.
And finally, any words of advice for other agencies as they look at moving from responding to potentially reopening?
Yes, one thing that I've noticed from our CIO, Jerry Moore, that he's implemented a very, work from home balance. And this work from home balance is very imperative. With this change that's affecting the entire United States, you're sending people home to do their jobs that you're paying them for, as well as, trying to take care of their household, whatever that may look like. And trying to minimize that stress as much as possible is necessary from a workforce perspective. Being transparent in our communication to your workforce. That's very, very helpful because in these unknown times, when you have your leadership, regardless if it's good or bad or whatever the case may be, when you have your leadership leading in that way and being transparent to say, we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what it looks like, but here are some things that we're looking at. What advice do you have for us? One thing that we've, really started here lately was, surveying our workforce. What does returning back to work look like? What information we need to gather from our workforce to give to the executive management so they can make an decision that's going to impact how they're going to do. So we, put in a survey, where would you like to work from home? Would you like to come back in an office? And, reevaluating basically what working from the office look like and making sure that we keep up with the productivity that we've seen with this pandemic, the increase in productivity. So, from an advice perspective, it's just, making sure that you implement that work-life balance for your employees and minimize as much stress as you can and just being transparent.
Those are great words of advice. So one quick question that came in from the audience was around something that you spoke about a little bit earlier, and that was this low-code mobile application. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did and kind of what that application's purpose was in your COVID-19 response?
Yes, it was built in Oracle Apex system, and what we did is we took all employees from this large agencies. They already had a list of employees, and the developers just uploaded it into the Apex system. And then behind that, we also, those who have the ability to make purchases on behalf of that agency will also have access. So it was just to allow them the ability to go straight. It's straight through the web, and they can go in, and they can do it also from their mobile, but go in and put in their date, their time, how many hours. And again, this was specific to anything that's related to the COVID-19 response. So it would have only entries for that. We just implemented a new feature, which if they put in a incorrect or erroneous entry in there, they had the ability to remove that entry. I'm also able to pull metrics from that to show the volume and to show the usage of this application. So it's very low grade. It's, it's something that you can train someone else to assist with in the back end, but it's built in Oracle Apex system.
And from what I understand, you can also take photos and kind of incorporate more immersive media types into this as well.
Yes. I did forget that, Pat. Yes, especially for purchases. You want to validate that purchase was appropriate and related to COVID. So they do have the ability to take the picture of the receipt or whatever it may be, and that's their documentation for that purpose that is being housed in the database.
Amazing. I know that's more important than ever, especially as employees are all distributed around. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing how you're leading in crisis and all the great work that's happening in the state of Oklahoma. We'll make sure to continue to profile that with our audience. And I wanted to share a little bit about kind of what we have in store over the weeks to come. And so we're really excited that, over the coming weeks, we'll be conducting a series of interviews and creating a guide that really highlights what we've learned from leading in crisis, and great, amazing examples like Oklahoma from agencies that are using technology to drive radical change, and they're responding to COVID-19 in new, innovative ways. We'll be diffusing all of this through the Government 360 Hub, which is on govtech.com/Oracle 360. So you'll make sure you'll want to plug into that and stay up to date. And we're also making it really easy for you to stay up to date with all of the agencies that we'll be recognizing. And I'll hand things over to Joe to close us out.
All right, guys. Well, we want to be respectful of our time commitment, and we're going to have to wrap it up here. But in closing, we want to thank Ayanna Wilkins for sharing her insights on today's webcast. We'd also like to thank our partners at Oracle for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And thanks to you, our audience, for spending a little bit of your day with us. We look forward to seeing you again on another GovTech event in the future. Have a great rest of your day.